morning, everybody. This is Rhett from OSPI and Graduation of Team Effort. Thanks for joining us today. This is our first webinar of the new year, 2015-2016. Hopefully, you guys were able to participate in our series last year. We focused on the system elements essential to a comprehensive dropout prevention, intervention, and re-engagement system. That included data use and early warning systems in the fall, multi-tiered systems of support through the winter, and engagement at each level in the spring. We have all of that archived online. We've got a YouTube page with videos of the webinars, as well as a website with the actual presentations on them. Please feel free to visit that at the GATE website. And one change in today's agenda, Jake is unable to join us today. He is, Kelso School District is on strike, so he is not able to join us. But we've got some key tidbits of information that we learned yesterday from our GATE Advisory Committee meeting. So we look forward to sharing some of that with you. This year, we're going to begin with our call to action on improving student attendance and reducing chronic absenteeism. Deb Kame is going to join us in just a minute here to talk about truancy and chronic absenteeism and the new data that we're going to have available this year on that for you. Attendance is viewed as such a key measure, not just on an individual student basis to identify if a student is having issues, but also as a systems measure. That's how one of the key ways GATE is going to be looking at if we're moving the needle is if we are improving attendance where we're trying to. So we're looking at not just at OSPI level, but how we can have other organizations and agencies also share attendance as a measure. It's one thing to be doing the goal that you set out to do, if it's drug prevention or health care, but seeing how the needle is also influencing student attendance is going to be, we think, a key way for all of us to measure our collective goal of increasing student outcomes. So with that, I would like to talk about our agenda briefly. Introduction, that's what we're going through right now. Deb Kame is going to be talking about absentee data, truancy and chronic absenteeism, and Dixie and I are going to follow up with more on our call to action. So I'd like to give the floor to Deb.
All right, good morning. Thank you for joining us today. As Rhett mentioned, I'm going to talk about student absence data. I am Deb Kame. I'm the Director of Student Information at OSPI. So I'm going to give a kind of a high-level look at the data, and then give you an idea of where we're headed and some analytics, some information we'll be coming out with in the near future. So the absence data that is collected at the state level at OSPI, we began to collect it in the 12-13 school year in the CEDARS system. There are sort of four parts of information that we collect, and we get this information at the student level. It's first broken out into excused and unexcused absences. The definition for excused absence is defined in WAC, in Administrative Code, and it includes things like participation in a district or school-approved activity, illness, or a number of other things. And then unexcused absence is anything that isn't excused. The other way that the data is broken out is by full day or part day. And so that's just a distinction. We don't have information at the particular class level. It's just broken out by full or part day. So that's the information that we have, and we now have 3 years of data, the 12-13, 13-14, and 14-15. So in trying to look at the absence information, if you can imagine a million students in the state and how many days of school each, that's a lot. So we actually collect absence information rather than actually attendance. It's just the flip side. And then in trying to measure it and trying to look at it and get our arms around it, we've come up with a couple of different measures. One of them is a truancy, and it's just an approximation. It isn't actually whether a truancy petition is filed, although we're exploring being able to collect that information at the student level. But for now, we're just kind of approximating it given the absence information that we do have. And what that is, we've tentatively defined it as 5 or more unexcused full-day absences within 30 days, within a month, or if it's 10 or more unexcused absences within the entire school year. And the other measure that we are looking at is chronic absence. And the research indicates that students who are gone out of school a lot, for whatever the reason, whether it's excused or unexcused, it has an impact on their outcomes. So we've defined this as student who misses 10% of scheduled instructional time, and that is to say 18 full-day absences, again, whether it's excused or unexcused. And there's been some a lot of attention recently about discipline, and just to note that if a student has been suspended, that is considered to be an excused absence. So just going to show some of the data that we've been compiling on those two measures, the truancy and chronically absent. So we have a chart here. There are different patterns by grade level. So whether it's the elementary or middle school, there's a distinction between that and the high school. So we've kind of broken them out here to see it a little bit more clearly. And so what this chart shows, we've got the 12-13 data on the left and the 13-14 data on the right. We are working on 14-15 and having that out in the near future. But the way this chart reads, if we look at the 13-14, and if you look at the students who are not low income, the non-FRL column, there were about 6% of students who are not low income who were chronically absent in 13-14. By comparison, if you look at the students who are low income, around 16% were chronically absent. So you can see the differences there in the two columns, that students who are low income are more likely to be chronically absent. You can see the information by the other groups as well. Male and female sort of have similar pattern. It's around 11%, and that's similar to what all students is as well. We do see some differences in the special ed and non-special ed. The special ed students on the kind of purple bar, second from the right, is about 16%.
Question is asking for an explanation of a non-FRL and FRL.
Okay. Okay, we have a question about FRL and non-FRL. That's a shorthand for free or reduced lunch, so it's an indicator of income status. So FRL is free reduced lunch, that's the low income students, and non-FRL is anyone who isn't eligible for free and reduced lunch. Okay, so then if we move to the high school measures, we see we've got the same scale here on as the previous chart, but the bars are much higher. That is to say, high school students are more likely to be absent, so more truancy and more chronically absent students. So looking at the high school students, for all of them, around, looks like about 23% of high school students were chronically absent, meaning they missed 18 school days or more. And also for truancy, we see more unexcused absences for high school students. It's around 13% of high school students were truant. On this chart, we see the same sort of pattern, that low-income students are more likely to be absent than not low-income, and same special ed. So this chart is just a different view trying to display the disproportionality. The sort of teal bar, the one that's on the far left, shows what the proportion of those students in the population generally. So looking at the far left for elementary or K-8 students, just around half of them are low income. So just above 50% of elementary students are low income, but low income students represent over 80% of the truant students in elementary. And then similarly, the low income students compose a greater percentage of students who are chronically absent. So the kind of teal bar for these groups represents their size in the population generally, and then the red and green bars show their representation of students who are truant or chronically absent. It's just kind of showing that it's disproportionate. It's similar information to the previous slides, but just a different view. We see that students who are low income are more likely to be absent. And this is another comparison showing the disproportionality for special ed students. Special ed students are, around 16% of elementary students, but they make up more than 20% of truant or chronically absent students. I'm going to talk. One more. On
this, just to clarify, for in an ideal world on this, all of these bars for each of these groups would be straight across, right?
Yes, so that you wouldn't necessarily see students of a particular group who are absent more than others, that it would be comparable across them. And I guess ideally we'd like to see fewer students absent overall,
right.
But to see it comparable across groups.
As a percent, like yes. So with the non-special ed with their 85%, ideally they would make up 85% of the truants and 85% of the chronically absent.
Yes.
Sort of. Yeah. Okay.
So, and one more look at the data that we do have, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more about where we're headed. But here's some information about truancy by ethnicity and race. This is the 12-13 data. The blue bars indicate the K-8 grade levels, and the orange is the high school levels. So if we look on the far left, for all students combined, around 2.4% of K-8 students are considered to be truant, and 13.7% of high school students are truant. And again, going back, the truant measure is 5 or more unexcused within 30 days, or 10 or more unexcused absences within the whole school year. But then, so on the far left is the all students, but then you see there's considerable variation by the race and ethnic groups. And I'm just going to pause for a minute to give you a chance to kind of digest what's there. So this chart, it makes a couple of things very striking to me. One is the difference between the grade levels, the blue and the orange, that there's much more absenteeism in high school levels. That's obvious across all groups, but the variation by the race and ethnic groups is quite striking. For the students of 2 or more races, or white students, it's around 10%. Or lower, and Asian students are a little bit higher than that at 14%. But for the other 4 groups, the truancy rates in high school are around a quarter. So Next, I'm going to kind of describe what's coming. OSPI has been working on, we're just calling it, oops, we have a question coming in. One moment, please.
Can you go back to the last slide, please? And the question is, we're having trouble understanding the math here. Shouldn't all the gold bars add up to 100%?
Okay, it's a look at the percent of students who are truant. So if we look at the Asian students for high school, it's 14.1. So among all Asian students in high school, 14% of them are truant or had absences that were truant.
So they don't make up 14% of all truants. That's what they were thinking, that this should, each orange bar should contribute to the total, but in fact it's comparing only the percent to that ethnic population within the school.
That's right.
Setting.
Yeah. So it isn't as a proportion of truant students, it's among that particular group, how many of them are truant. So the Native Hawaiian students, almost 30% of Native Hawaiian students in high school are truant, or truant approximation. That doesn't mean that a truancy petition was filed. So coming soon, you may have seen that OSPI has been providing data some looks in an analytical tool or an Excel worksheet to try to help visualize where districts are compared to other districts. We've provided the information so far about discipline, and we've also done it with some graduation rates. And we'll be doing something similar with this absence data. We'll be looking at it by district, and the first pass at it will be looking at the percentage of students that are chronically absent. And so we're display it in a chart to help aid with comparison and identify best practices. So you might be able to see where a similar district that you think is similar to yours, what does their absence look like? Is it a lot lower? Is there something that could be learned? And there'll be filters, so you can look at the data and you can narrow down the bubbles that you're looking at. It'll be by race and ethnicity, or the percent of the school or district that's free and reduced lunch. How does the special ed population look compared to your special ed population, or by ESD or region? So it's just to help see what's happening. So there'll be kind of a statewide. This one with the blue series of dots shows all of the districts in the state and kind of what that looks like. These are pictures of the discipline data, but that will have similar illustration of the absence information. And so there'll be, can be something like this where there will be filters up at the top. You can select which school year you want to look at, maybe an ESD if you only want to look at districts within a particular ESD, and also then groups. You could look at the race or ethnicity or other program groups to compare absence information from your area to other areas. It just helps to kind of browse through and look at, do we have one group that's much higher than others? How does that look in other places? And similarly, some bubble charts that can show rates of absenteeism against other measures.
Can I ask a question?
Certainly.
This is Dixie. I'm sitting here with Deb and Olympia. Will the analytics focus on chronic absenteeism, or truancy, or attendance rates, or all of the above?
Our first take at it is going to be chronic absenteeism, because that's the student outcomes, how it affects them later. So we're going to look at absenteeism overall, and that's the measure of 18 days or more in a school year.
I'm pretty excited about this data. We at GATE have been we've been looking at identifying districts that are successfully graduating students and reducing disproportionality. So we've been using the toolkit online about graduation rates. There's a discipline up one up there, which I haven't gotten into very much yet, but that interests me. And then our focus on attendance is really going to be, I think, a big push. And we're, we've been looking at what measures of success that we're going to be able to look for, and it started with graduation rates, but we've also got ninth grade failure rates and attendance rates and discipline. So having a tool that's easy to access would be super for that. To help us learn who's actually succeeding with those. We know that some people are, and how can we better identify them, and how can we learn from them and share those practices?
Another question has come in: is there any way to compare the data with public schools with those of private schools?
We do not get the information for the private schools, so no.
Okay. Any other questions out there?
This is good data and candidly not surprising. I am wondering if you can also look at teacher absenteeism due to sick leave, personal leave, and now all the days out for testing, especially at elementary levels. My assumption is teachers are out close to the 18 days per year.
I don't believe that we have teacher absence information. I can check, but I don't think that that's available, that OSPI has that information.
Is there a filter for 504 eligible students and attendance?
Yes, I think that will be incorporated. I'll double check, but yes, I think we do have one, and I will see if we can get it included as well.
I know that one's in the graduation rate.
Okay, then yes, we will do it.
And then I came to the webinar late. Is this information that will be in the My School data system?
I think that that's a private vendor solution. I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with My School, but this is information we'll be producing. It'll be an Excel sheet that's published for all districts that are of sufficient size, and it'll be posted publicly.
That is an interesting question about, now we've got this at a district and state level, what kind of views do districts and buildings have, then getting more granular, and that's something that we'll have to talk to OSPI and some of these, right, and just to see if they can create the kind of analytics you need to actually then produce some actionables.
So on that same follow-up, this is in our Skyward system, and I thought it was via OSPI. Their ESD rolled out the training, and then Susan Kanega replies, ESD network CSA DQ is working on that. And so I think that if Skyward feeds into OSPI, and Skyward also feeds into My School data, and that's the tool that that the OSPI has produced for early warning and intervention systems. So they're working on that, Carol. And then another question is, are excused absences included in this analysis or only unexcused?
So they're the two different measures, so it depends on whether the measure is truancy, and that is only unexcused absences. But for chronic absent measure, it is all absences, both excused and unexcused.
And then the next question is, can each school district bring up data for each ethnic group?
Yes, we'll have that. We will include that as long as the group is of sufficient size.
And then the follow-up is, what constitutes sufficient size? What is the N?
I believe it's 10 is what we can share. For privacy reasons, we may make it a larger number. We did that with the graduation just because otherwise the data kind of bounces around a lot. So legally it's 10, but we may make it a little bit a larger number because otherwise you just see noise in the charts.
Graduation rate, it's at 20.
And then they're asking 10 what? And I think it's 10 students.
Yeah, 10 students enrolled at the school or district.
Yeah, so it's 10 students, not 10% of the population.
We have I would be interested if you're out there and using any of our data toolkits. You know, we're looking at ways that districts are using them, and if they're useful, and what other ways would they be useful. So if you have any information, any feedback on those, feel free to send it our way. That would be great.
And then a little follow-up still about the My School data from Susan Kanaga here at OSPI. Logic model to plug school data in, and yes, schools with My School data can pull their own data.
Yeah, that's something at the state level too, is ours sort of ends at last year. We don't have recent data like you would have in your school system. Good. Thank you, Deb. Now, I think we're going to talk a little bit about our call to action today. We spent some time yesterday talking with our advisory committee on attendance. We focused on Deb's presentation, and we followed that up with a series of questions to the participants about why kids are out of school, what we're doing to increase student attendance that positively impacts student attendance, and what barriers are there to state and local efforts to do that. So let's talk about absences a little bit.
Good morning. This is Dixie here at OSPI, and Red, I'm going to ask you to chime in. This is a little bit of shift in our planned agenda. Maybe you joined the webinar today to hear from Jake from Kelso School District talk about their specific attendance efforts, and unfortunately Jake was unable to join us, but we hope to get him at a future webinar, and we'll certainly convey what they've been doing. But we're going to capitalize on his inability to make it today to talk a little bit about maybe a little bit more global, high-level look at attendance and chronic absenteeism. And as Rhett mentioned, we met yesterday with a group of, 50 so people and talked about this. So I will frame this to say that a lot of this information came from attendanceworks.org. It's a website that really is the go-to place looking at the research behind attendance and chronic absenteeism and its impact on student achievement, its connection to health indicators and how health impacts attendance. They have webinars, lots of PowerPoints and resources there, and best practices and promising approaches, toolkits. So I can't speak enough to, if you're looking to do something in your district or school, check out attendanceworks.org before you get started. But this is going to be kind of a high-level discussion. If the data looks interesting and you're going to do a little bit more mining, some things to consider as you move forward. So just some basic myths about absences, and if you have additional myths, I encourage you to type them in and we'll add to our list. We're just kicking this effort off and want to enhance our resources as we move forward. But some of the myths I've heard or that I gathered were that only unexcused absences are bad. And I think one of the comments that came through about truancy looks at unexcused, but chronic absenteeism is all of the above. And I think many of us maybe are at the point where we know any absence, excused or not, means the student is not in the chair, not at school engaged in the learning, so it's going to impact. So that's one of the myths.
I think that's one of the issues too, is what is an excused absence can depend on what the policies are at the district level of what they're going to accept as an out-of-school activity. So we've got variability in that, but if we go from all absences, we know that all absences have an effect on student learning. So
it does take the variability out. You're right. The other thing I see is sporadic absences aren't as bad. You know, if I only miss one day this week and one day next week, at least I was there to pick up some information, versus if I'm gone 2 weeks in a row, that really is going to set me back. And I think the research will show that any absences, whether it's sporadic or consecutive, impacts learning.
A couple questions have come in. What I discovered from WA-Kids data in the past years regarding PL students are physically ready but not mentally ready at all. Is there a discussion of expanding the WA-Kids program?
Well, that's something, you know, like I said, we're just starting to look at this data, and certainly the Department of Early Learning is involved in our GATE backbone, and we're going to write that down, and we have a meeting with with our policy leads coming up in November, so we'll definitely ask that question.
Another myth that I would like added is schools have to accept every reason every parent gives in a note.
That's a good one. Well, and we'll get to that, I think, a little bit more as we move forward about how we can work with parents so they understand it's not so much that you give the excuse. It's the reason why we need your kids at school, and the understanding how important it is that they come every day. So last myth I found that attendance only matters in high school, and I think, you know, that's kind of an old myth. I think we know how important it is from early learning, set those routines and that expectation in elementary school, because so much of getting kids on track starts in that elementary school, and what happens in elementary school really does set the tone as we move to middle school, and can impact graduation just as much as what's going on in high school.
Yeah, the research on that shows, you know, that students, that is dropout indicator for elementary school is those attendance rates, and so, you know, a lot of that carries over all the way through high school. You can identify those kids early in grade school that they're missing school, and those kids tend to be the ones that drop out.
And then another myth that has come in is that suspensions are not really absences.
We had that come up yesterday, and I think Deb said they are not.
They're considered excused.
They're coded as absences. They're coded as excused, so they won't show up in the truancy. But
they do contribute to chronic absenteeism.
They do. Yes, they absolutely do.
And we've seen a lot of that in the districts that we've been talking to that are succeeding in raising graduation rates. Is they're trying to figure out better ways of discipline in their school. You know, moving to in-school suspensions, and how can they improve supports during those in-school suspensions, and what kind of supports can they give those kids that they do have to suspend or expel out of school, so that they don't drop out.
Okay. Keep typing in the myths if you think of some as we go through.
There is another question. The data is clear and precise to the research. What effort of OSPI to reach out to communities with alarming data of their students?
And that's what we're going to work on. We had that kickoff meeting yesterday, and Department of Health was there along with Department of Social and Health Services and Early Learning and all of our agency partners. And we're just gathering and collecting information. And again, in November, we're going to pull all the policy leaders, representatives, senators, the heads of all those agencies to say collectively, how can we go about this? Because we really think about the graduation initiative that we're putting on. Attendance is one thing that we can all agree on and we can all work towards. And I think the school plays an important role in attendance, but so does the community, right, in getting those kids to school. So it's going to be a great opportunity to collaborate, and what specifically happens over the next couple months is dependent on, you know, these kind of webinars and the comments we collect and the traction we can get with some of these policy leaders to deal with this as an issue. But we see it as a critical effort. And
here's another myth. Teachers who tell students they cannot make up missed work due to truancy are teaching responsibility.
Oh.
That's a good one, too.
That is good. I'll add it to the list. Thank you. Thank you.
That's another thing that comes up frequently in our discussions with those districts that are doing high grad rates, is that they give those kids multiple opportunities for success. You know, they find that, you know, as adults we get those.
Yeah.
We need to
stop the blame game.
Yeah.
And then a question that we may not be able to answer, it's I think more about the attendance data that Deb was presenting. And the question is, will this data go back 4 to 5 years so we can compare where we have been and where we are now so we can plan, focus, change, action plans?
Right. I think what Deb shared was what we've collected. We just started collecting attendance data 2-3 years ago. So that doesn't mean you haven't been collecting at the local level and you can't do that planning. I think from our perspective, this really shines the light on the extensiveness of absences. I mean, I think when we looked at it, we were blown away at the percentages. And then when you start looking at the subpopulations, but the real work and the mining of the data and the looking for gaps is going to happen at that local level. And so I don't know specifically what's available at the local level as far as longitudinal, but definitely the more data you've got, the more power you have.
And then follow up to the earlier question about what is OSPI sort of going to do is, thank you for the feedback. I guess my question is referring to the community level in terms of partnerships, et cetera.
Yep, and that's what we're going to do is we're going to shine a light on it. We're going to promote best practice, which means work collectively through, some collective impact initiative at the local level, and districts and buildings set an attendance goal and pull your partners in and work on that. And we'll get examples of where that's happening, and we'll, promote that as great work. But we can't dictate that, obviously. That's going to have to be something that's driven at the local level, but we'll certainly show where it's effective and the positives to doing that, and we'll promote it on the community side as well to our community partners. So I'm going to go through a couple slides and then we'll respond to questions. So when we look at attendance or absenteeism, there's some barriers to attendance that rise to the top: chronic disease, health issues of both the student and the family member. So we have kids missing because they are sick or they have to attend to a family member. They have lack of access to accessible or convenient medical dental care, poor transportation, so just not, they don't have reliable transportation. There could be some trauma that gets in the way of their ability to make it to school, and no safe path to school. So that can be a barrier to attendance. I'm sure there are many others. If you've got some to add, we can list through those really quick, and then we'll move forward. I'm going to, while you're typing those in, I'm going to move to aversions of school. So besides the barriers, like the physical kind of barriers or things that we've listed here, go ahead and move on. There's also kind of from the student side, maybe some aversions to school. So I can't get there, but I'm also being pushed away for some reason. So students struggling academically, I mean, this is kind of common sense too. If I'm not doing very well, it's not a real positive place. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm a failure. I don't want to go there. Lack of engaging instruction. It's not something that I find interesting and relevant, and so I'm gonna bypass school and go do something else more fun. Poor school climate. Some of our outlier districts actually survey their students and say, is this a place that is welcoming? Would you recommend it to a friend? Is it a place where you want to come every day? I know as an adult, obviously work climates play the same role. I'm much more apt to come to work if I work with a great team and the workplace is supportive and it's a nice place to come. Ineffective school discipline practices, I think that lends into the school climate as well. And then parents with negative school attitudes. So if parents had a poor experience or don't see the value of the educational experience or being at school, that can be prohibitive to getting kids to school. So those are kind of all the things, thinking of the negative, all the things that are going to keep kids from getting to school. So what do we have for barriers and things to add?
So some things to add are the language and cultural barriers for students and families who are not necessarily English as their first language or were born here. Lack of parent buy-in to the importance of daily attendance is in itself a barrier, particularly at the elementary. the lack of relevance of curriculum, especially in high school for many kids. Many kids simply say, why do I need to know this?
Yep.
The barrier of the family or home culture does not understand the value of attendance as it relates to academics. And then subsequently the success in academics. And then in the aversion slide, kids really drop out of school in the 3rd or 4th grade. They just don't really tell us that they've done that until they're hit the 9th or 10th grade. They have to have that success in the elementary school to be successful by the time they hit the 9th or 10th grade. And then specifically speaking, Pacific Islander students feel intimidated by the school environment due to cultural barriers. Lack of parent supervision, parents working multiple jobs. And then a question was, can you please expand on ineffective school discipline?
One thing that comes to mind is that, you know, those the interviews with students that have dropped out already was one of the silly discipline things of getting suspended because they were missing school. Or, you know, there's definitely some what's the term? Disproportionality to discipline in schools that push out populations more.
And I also think, I'm wondering if it's the lack of clearly defined expectations and then consistently delivered consequences. So kids feeling like they don't want me there anyway, I always get in trouble, you know, and some of that, right, might be playing the victim, but some of it, speaking to the disproportionality, may be true. Rules may be different for some and not for others, and really creating that school-wide behavior expectation and then being consistent with the consequences and understanding why the consequences are in place and remembering that it's not for punishment. The consequences are to teach the appropriate behavior because we want people to be successful. We want the students to be successful, not for the punishment part.
And so a classic example of an ineffective school discipline process around attendance is when a student has been truant and has had a BECA bill, gone to court and been ordered by the court to attend school, violates that, and then is arrested at school and taken away from school to go sit in juvenile detention. It's kind of defeating the purpose. So that's a kind of an extreme, but it does happen. Also, in the aversions was when death has hit a family, grief can overwhelm the student and the family, and attendance is impacted.
Yep. Excellent. Excellent additions. Okay, I'm going to move on. Again, if you have more things to add, please continue to type those in, and we get a listing of all these comments, and we'll make sure to update PowerPoint and post it when we finish. One
more aversion is clicks the mean girl factor, which I think talks more specifically to not just school climate, but harassment and bullying and intimidation that can happen. And we certainly see that with our lesbian, gay population in an extreme of.
Okay, good. Okay, so some ground rules as we're working on some of this attendance and decreasing chronic absenteeism. Just things to remember. Use data to identify where the gaps are the greatest. I think we all start with a preconceived notion of what we think is happening, and you may be spot on, but until you dive down into the data through your student information system and take a look at chronic absenteeism as a whole, and maybe you've already done this, and if you have, you're ahead of the curve. And then where are those gaps, and are there certain students that are missing, and then getting to some of those systemic kind of responses to that data. So use data to identify where the gaps are, unpack what's contributing to those gaps to find solutions, so do some problem solving. And I think the biggest one here is to avoid the blame game, blaming those families or those kids, and look for a systemic response. It may be, you know, that family, but so what? So what are we going to do about it, and how do we create the supports and the responses needed to help them be successful to get to school?
So along those lines, we have a comment. We need to consider the school's ability or inability to effectively engage families and the community as an asset or a barrier to parent engagement around attendance. Rather than just say there are cultural barriers, I think what we are speaking to is our challenge or inability to effectively engage these families in a way that will affect positive change.
Yep. I think you're getting to some of these root causes and the kind of conversations that have to happen. So let's move on to some Tier 1 responses. And this is a bulleted list of five kind of responses. Each one of them, a mountain of work, right? And an effort underneath each one. I wish, you know, it was just a simple go down this list and check it off, but lots of them will entail a lot of work, as illustrated by the last one about ability to effectively engage families. First one, and if you're doing this, congratulations, and it's paramount, is to recognize good and improving attendance. If you're involved in positive behavior interventions and supports, you know all about positive recognition for the behavior you want to see. This is an area where that is going to be critical. So you want to reward positive attendance, and if you have a kid that's missing quite a bit, even the smallest improvement is something that should be recognized and rewarded and acknowledged, and we are so happy that you made it one more day, you know, and can we build on that? Can we make it two? Or so that improvement piece, I think, is just as critical. We had some stories yesterday from some districts that really focused and had like 6-week efforts that said we're going to focus on attendance for the next 6 weeks, and they were able to increase attendance or decrease chronic absenteeism by like 3.7%. I mean, which in 6 weeks, that's huge. And it was by recognizing positive movement in the slightest. Some other things you can do for all students, thinking Tier 1, educate and engage families. This is where we're talking about the importance that your student comes to school every day and why it's important, and making families feel welcome. And that's, like I said, that's a huge undertaking, but critical, I think, to the underpinning of why kids maybe aren't coming to school and addressing those issues. I think to monitor data, attendance data, is a Tier 1 response. It's something that should be done before any kind of Tier 2 response happens, is knowing that data. Clarifying attendance expectations and goals. If I don't know what the expectation is and I don't see that goal laid out in front of me, it's really hard as a staff person even to understand what I'm shooting for. And as a family, what is the expectation? That students be here every day, ready to learn with, you know, this and this, and this is our expectation. If you have a problem, please let us know. I think putting that behavior expectation around attendance is critical. And then establishing a positive, engaging school climate so that students want to come to school and they see it as, I would rather be there than whatever the alternative is. And that's a pretty global kind of undertaking. But we're seeing that the school climate is critical for student success. And you know that because it's part of the TPEP evaluation, and it's critical in this work.
So comments from the field, a resource that might be helpful in identifying student-specific attendance issues is Jensen et al. Absenteeism and Truancy and Functional Plan Interventions, Universal Procedures from Pacific Publishing, 2013. And interesting on Tier 1 is we got a lot of hassle from parents about our perfect attendance awards. They wanted exceptions made. So that Tier 1 recognition was not being met with success in their community.
I think 100% for 100% attendance is a tough one because, you know, you don't want the kids there if they are sick. You know, you don't want.
No. So you talk about health and things like that. But I think to not acknowledge attendance and those goals, and that's the kind of dynamics you'll have to deal with at the local level. And maybe you don't reward 100% attendance, you reward 99% attendance. I don't know. I mean, that's the kind of dynamics you have to work at the local level. We certainly, if you I mean, I think we all understand the importance of saying this is our expectation, this is what we're shooting for, and can we collectively as a school do this? And as a class, can we do this and work on those things? So Tier 1 responses are important, but then we're going to have kids, right, that for reasons beyond their control or things we can help them with, need a little bit extra support. So some Tier 2 kind of responses to absenteeism is providing that personalized outreach. Some of the most success that we heard from some of our districts, the thing they got the most traction for was immediate personalized outreach. The minute the student was gone, it was calling home, you know, why wasn't they at school today? What was the problem? Is there anything we can do to help?
Not the robocall.
Not the robocall. It was the personalized, and that is resource. But again, if this is the initiative and you're moving forward, I think that really does go a long way. And if you've done a real solid Tier 1 foundational work, you're not talking about hopefully hundreds of kids needing those personalized calls. We've, you know, gotten, if you follow the theory, 80% of the kids shored up in Tier 1, so Tier 2 shouldn't be too taxing. But that personalized outreach, and at one school we said, we heard that if it was a Native American student, they used their tribal liaison person. If it was a Hispanic student, they used their migrant education person to try to bridge some of those cultural things so parents felt comfortable speaking to the person on the phone. And that just varies based on the resources you have in the building and what makes the most sense for you. But I think that's important. Meeting with students and families to develop a plan about how we can work together. You know, that's one of the things, if you know about Check and Connect, which is an evidence-based practice that tracks attendance as one of its key functions, is the engagement of family, student, and school together to collectively address attendance behavior and school success, and empowering students and families to be part of the solution as opposed to being reprimanded or talked down to, but hey, collectively, how can we work on this together? Something that we've seen is useful is offering an attendance buddy. You know, you got somebody who's kind of the person that's going to miss you when you're gone, kind of keep track of you, maybe peer mentor. You know, you come into school, we need you here. That can be an adult or that can be a student. Offering a walking companion. So if the safe route to school is an issue, can we set something up where you can maybe group together with somebody else and kind of get somebody to help you? And I know personally, if I have somebody that I need to work out with and I have a partner at the gym, I'm more apt to show up than if I try to go by myself. So walking companion, if I got somebody waiting on the curb to walk to school with me, I might be more apt to get up and get out the door than, you know, if I was by myself. One other thing, recruit and engage before and after school. So something that could be a carrot is you got to come to school because there's this great thing you get to be involved with before school starts or after school or even within the school day. And that's part of that, creating either the relevancy or just the engagement of wanting to be at school. And if it's a health issue, help with, offer a plan for health support and figuring out access to health care, dental care, figuring out a plan for that to respond to those issues if that's what's keeping the kids out of school.
And we had a comment that it's important to reward improved attendance as well as the perfect attendance.
That's right. I think any incremental increase is critical. The Tier 3 responses are really, then you're getting into, just like with everything else, that intensive case management with coordinated public agency support. So that's where we call in all of our partners and trying to figure out how do we wrap around these students and families to
individualized support.
Yeah, really individualized, and often involving resources beyond the scope of the schoolhouse. So I think one thing that's critical if you're looking at an attendance effort is really creating that shared accountability. Some schools will create a school attendance team, or they'll make it part of their site team, but they'll really make it an agenda item or a specific responsibility of a team. That team will set a goal, or the school will set a goal collectively to say this is what we're shooting for around attendance. Know who is chronically absent and why. You have to know who you're dealing with to know how to respond. And then build that capacity to improve the attendance. So once you've figured out why, you have to have the ability to respond. And some of that you may have, and some may take time to develop. And that's where we're hoping, as we collect efforts and people who have done this work, if you're looking for a suggestion, or hey, I have a problem, we'll have a cadre of efforts and people you can turn to call upon and serve as mentors as you do this work. And then what we heard yesterday was, the whole thing around initiative fatigue, and oh my gosh, now we got to worry about attendance. This is just one more thing. One thing you could think about, instead of it being one more thing in addition, it really is a part of other priorities that you're already doing, as opposed to something totally out of the way. I mean, certainly for us here, the attendance call to action is just part of getting kids to graduation and ready for college, career, and life. It's not one more thing. It really is embedded in many of the other works, and it just becomes a measure for the work that we're doing. Bottom line for any effort, I think positive messaging that attendance is important. I think shifting that. We certainly can look at chronic absenteeism and look at truancy from our decision-making perspective, but when it gets down to the student, it has to be a positive spin on it. It has to be about, we need you here, we want you here, and if not 100% attendance, regular attendance is critical and important. Making sure that actionable data is available and regularly looked at. The information is collected, we know that, because it has to be uploaded to us, but is it being conveyed in a way that's useful to modify practice and improve attendance at the local level? And then working on that building capacity to really interpret that data and respond appropriately. So I do, again, apologize for not having Jake here. We will have him hopefully at a future one, but hopefully this has served as creating some foundational knowledge. And here's a couple resources. Our GATE website, where this webinar will be posted along with resources as we collect them. The Attendance Works website, which has a great deal of information. I can't emphasize enough the importance of going to that website and checking that out. And here is my information along with Rhett's. If you have suggestions, comments, additions, things you'd like to learn more about, please feel free to contact Rhett or myself.
Yeah, if you've got any feedback on any of our data tools that we've got on our website, I would love to hear more about that, or how you're using it effectively. That would be awesome. We're always looking for best practices that we can share. Thanks for joining us. It looks like we're just about out of time. We'll be doing it again same time next month. We will have somebody here to talk about specific practices that they are doing at the local level as well. As you see, I kind of left something off my website as well. It's k12.wa.us/gate, G-A-T-E.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, and thanks for the great dialogue. Appreciate it.